I'm Veerle Vandeweerd. I'm a Belgian, but have not lived in Belgium for a very long time. I consider myself as a world citizen. At this moment in time, I'm the director of the UNDP Environment and Energy Group. Now, UNDP is the major arm of the United Nations that works on human development. You know, we are on the ground in 166 countries. You know, we have 10,000 people, and we really try to address poverty reduction. Of course, then the question is how this relates, you know, to climate change and to the oceans, and I come back on this one. But I think important for this conference is also to realize that nearly 5 years ago, together with Brianna Sand, you know, we started this Global Ocean Forum. For the simple reason that we realized that all the oceans, you know, are 70% of the globe, and oceans provide us with tremendous amount of biodiversity, of services, for energy, you know, that in fact people are really not aware that oceans are so important for our survival. The oceans are blue, they are big, you know, but nobody really realized that in fact life on Earth is not possible without the oceans. And we consider it a bit as a bin. You know, we throw everything, you know, we build lots of cities on the coastal zones, and then we pump all our dirt into the oceans and think the oceans can absorb everything. But in the end of the day, you know, the oceans also have a limit. And once we start interfering with the oceans processes, you know, we really might compromise, you know, life on Earth. And it was this realization, this I would say love, passion for the oceans, that drove a number of us, you know, to really say, listen, the international community and the national governments and the people on this world are not really putting enough attention on the oceans. And when we had the World Summit in Joburg, you know, the World Summit on Sustainable Development, in the first papers that came out for the World Summit, there was no one single mention of coast and oceans. And we said this is impossible. You know, if we really are looking for sustainable development, but we forget 70% of our, you know, planet, we have to do something. And so we started mobilizing. You know, in fact, in the beginning, a very small group, maybe 20 of us, really lobbying governments, lobbying NGOs, to really start saying, people, you know, we have to put coast and oceans on the agenda of the World Summit in Joburg. And it worked. At least there was a chapter on coast and oceans. Maybe for us, you know, who are dedicated to this issue, not enough, but at least, you know, it was one of the aspects which we had to consider. And we came up with a number of targets. You know, targets which were sometimes very difficult, like we would have ecosystem management for all the coast and ocean areas by 2010, which is sort of not going to happen. But at least, you know, the global community realized the importance of oceans and put some targets on the agenda. So that was, you know, 2001 in Joburg, and 2002 when the conference took place. And then when the conference was over, we said, well, this was really a good momentum. You know, people coming together, each of us with our profession, people from governments, you know, people from academia, people from United Nations organizations, you know, just citizens who were interested in oceans issues. Why don't we continue? You know, why don't we really stay together, work together, and every single opportunity there is, try to bring the coast and oceans issue to the attention of the world public and our leaders. And then we went, you know, to, for example, there was a conference in Mauritius, you know, on small island development states. We have 42 small island development states. And in fact, we call them small island development states, but they are in fact large ocean states. You know, these people really are the governance of large parts of our planet. And we really also worked with the small island development states to bring their plea, you know, to the attention of the world community. And so now we are in the 4th conference. So we really have been managing, you know, to keep the attention bit by bit or increasingly on the ocean issues. And I think the group you have here down, you know, being together for this week, are in fact the world ocean leaders. You know, we are a very small community, strangely, because if you, for example, look at the freshwater issues, you know, the freshwater issues receive a lot of attention. Because, of course, we all know we need water for drinking, we need water for agriculture, you know, we need water for living. But of course, water at the end of the day, you know, is very closely linked to the oceans because, you know, there is the whole hydrological cycle. And the group of people in the world who are working on freshwater is tremendous, big. You know, here we have 400 people, and I can tell you, most of the people who are really active in the field of oceans are here. What we are trying to do here is, in fact, first of all, keep the momentum, you know, raise the issues which are related to oceans. And therefore this conference is rather broad. It's not only about, one particular aspect. It addresses all the aspects of oceans, from the biodiversity, from the transport, from the deep sea, the deep sea, which is a tremendous resource available to mankind, what we call the last frontier. We don't really know what's happening in the deep sea. We know that 80% of the world biodiversity is in the seas, but maybe at this moment in time we know a couple of percent of what is happening. So there is a tremendous amount of still work and exploration which we have to do. Particularly for this conference, and why I'm positive, because if you work for 20 years for the environment, sometimes you lose, faith that still something is going to happen. But I think in this conference, maybe again, we will be able to make a major jump forward. And the reason is that, luckily, climate change is getting the world attention. Of course, climate change, is with us already for many, many years. We have the IPCC reports, now we have the 4th IPCC report. But even though, like 20 years ago, there was a political peak and people really said climate change is important, it just, waded away. But now, I think it's there. It's there again, and it's there to see. I think people start realizing that indeed climate change is happening, it's happening now, and it's going to impact on all our lives. And people start realizing that we have to do something now. If we don't do something now, it will become much worse, and it will become much more costly to address it. So the momentum which climate change is giving to the environmental agenda, but not only to the environmental agenda, but to the whole, development agenda, hopefully will also portray well on the coast and ocean issues. We should not forget that 37% of the world population live in coastal zones. And if indeed climate change is going, well, it's not going to happen, if indeed it is happening, the first one who are vulnerable are the people who are living in the coastal areas. 1 billion people depend, on fish for their daily protein intake. 37% live in areas which indeed there is sea level rise, will be threatened. 37% of the world population are more susceptible to storms, to tsunamis, to major events. So people will have to be, protected against this one. And I think the world community is now aware that we have to do things. We had in Bali here in Indonesia, a major conference which really agreed that we are going to have a roadmap on how to deal with climate change, in the coming years. What we need to do in this conference is putting the whole coast and ocean issues in the center of the climate change debate. And really use the momentum, the money which is going to flow, the action which is going to take, to use this momentum also to help the coast and ocean people. So I hope that, we will have, well, we always have a very lively conference. People who come here are not people because they have to come to another scientific conference. They come here because, their heart is in the oceans. And they come here, to tell the world, let's do something. Let's, be proactive. Let's protect this tremendous resource we have. That's, in fact, the first goal of this conference. I'm confident that once again, together with the whole group, we will be able to give it a push. That hopefully, and thanks, to outreach like you're doing, where in fact we also connect with the rest of the world. I think the young people, particularly the young people, because it's the young people who will have to carry the brunt of the climate change. It's the young people who will suffer, when we destroy our coasts and oceans. And I think more and more the young people are really getting aware that this is something they have to work for. And so I hope that all these young people, who are looking at this program or going on to YouTube, will really be motivated to do their little bit. And their little bit in particular is, tell to their policymakers, tell, to the people they deal with, listen, we cannot continue living as we do. We don't have to become poor. We don't have to give up our welfare. But we have to do things differently. We have to do our transport differently. We have to work differently with our energy. We have to produce differently. We really have to reconsider how this wonderful planet Earth is managed. And that's, I think, what the young people will have to do. And I think it's a tremendous opportunity. Because, if we continue like we're doing it, we're going to destroy. But if we, are clever, and we use the technology, and we use the knowledge, and we use the science we have, we can, really work towards a much more sustainable world. And that's what it's all about.